Shalom, all praises to Yahweh Bashem Yahushai, and double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, Bashem Rakak Wadash. My name is Yakalba from Playing Tables Camp in Philly. And this is a book. I'd say it's about 90% accurate, maybe more. All right, I was just skimming through it, seeing a few pages. Social science commentary on the letters of Paul. Bruce J. Molina, Bruce J. Molina, and John J. Pilch. It was printed in 2006. It's about 400-something pages. You can read it for free on this archive.org page. You just got to borrow it once you sign up. You can borrow it for 1 hour. You have to keep clicking borrow. It's going to log you out of the borrowing after 1 hour. Then it's logged back in, and you can just continuously keep reading the book. Or you can buy the book. I think it's like $20. But for seasoned veterans, you brothers, you already understand when you see the word Greek or Hellen, Gentile, the Greeks, it's referring to Israelites among the Greeks. All right, meaning when he goes in this book, what he explains is that there was no such nation as nation of Greeks. All right, there was no Greek citizenship. Greek was a culture and a status. All right, it wasn't like there was no kingdom of Greece because Greece ceased to exist. All right, and that's some of the things he explains in this book. All right, and we'll go through a few pages. And through his analyzation, or through their analyzation of the Paul's letters, they found out that Hellen, when you see Hellen, there is referring to Israelite. They explicitly say Israelite. All right. Now, again, our apostles and elders already went through all this. This is just like icing on the the top of the cake to further prove that other people, these are more than likely the Edomites, can see clearly that Hellen is referring to Israelites and not referring to so-called white people or actual Japhites. All right, which so-called white people are Shemitic. All right, and Japhites come from a different son. They're not the same, although they mingled themselves together. All right, that's what Esau does. He mingles himself among the different tribes, different sons of Noah. All right, so we'll come back to this book. I just took some screenshots out, and so it can be easy to look at. All right, so we're not gonna go like when let me just go through it. Like you click the pages. So they basically photocopied it and put it in this little program, scanning program. You just click it and you'll get the pages. All right. But I took some screenshots out. Let me just go through the table of contents so you can see it. So they left the book of Ephesians out. All right. Which I know that this book was, they're insiders. Because there's no reason to leave the book of Ephesians out. They have Thessalonians, Corinthians, Galatians, Romans, Philippians, Philemon. And they left the book of Ephesians out. The book of Ephesians is a just like Romans is a damning book against the current narrative. Galatians, all these books, Romans, Thessalonians, the book of Ephesians is damning to the narrative of every time you see the word Gentile or Hellen, it's talking about so-called white people. That's pretty much what they want to say. All right, talking about Caucasians. No. So they excluded Ephesians, and they give an explanation, which is a stupid ass explanation. I believe it said it's because it's to the heathen or something like that. I'm like, then that contradicts the whole point of the book. All the books of Paul and Peter and all the disciples and apostles were written in context to other Israelites that are among foreign lands or that were in the land of Israel. Simple as that. Not complicated. All right, so I took a couple of screenshots out. I think this book is like $20. Let me get the price of this book real quick. All right, the book is $37 on Kindle, $39 on, or $40 on paper, or you can just read it for free on archive.org. All right, read it free here, archive.org, and type in the title. Now on to the lesson. So I was looking up the language of Laconia in the book of Acts, the 14th chapter, and I typed it in, and I kept scrolling, and I found this article from Evangelical Textual Criticism, evangelicaltextualcriticism.blogspot.com, and what our elders and apostles have been teaching. All right, that when you see the word, this translates as Gentile or Greek. All right, when you see this word, it's referring to Israelites. So they're saying, well, the book is good, but look at 1 Corinthians 1:18. This is problematic. So this is what the book in summarizes. The book I just showed you. In a post on the collective blog Thoughts of Antiquity, Chris Zachman refers to a radical proposal to the EUdios debate, meaning when you see the word Jew, who is it talking about? When you see the word Hellen in the Greek, or Gentile Greek in the English, who is it talking about? The EUdios debate, made by Bruce Molina and John Pelch in the Social Science Commentary on the Letters of Paul. They think Paul uses Israelite as an implicit antecedent, meaning come before, in every use of Hellenist and EUdios. All right. EUdios is the root, and that's the actual word there in the Greek. It's a little hard to pronounce. I just say EUdios. It's the root word. And the Hellenist, which would be like Greek or Gentile in the English. So antecedent means come before, a thing or event that exists before or logically precedes another. So Israelite precedes Hellen or Greek and Jew. So every time you see Greek and Jew, it's referring to Israelite. Haven't our apostles and elders been saying this for years, 30 plus years and beyond? All right. Or whenever the understanding came in of who the Gentiles were, all right, our elders and apostles been saying it. All right. So these are Edomites. All right. So this debate has been going on. It's just you Christians, you're not really that well researched. This is not a new debate that we're having. This is an article from 2008. All right. Then he says it's problematic here because of 1 Corinthians 1:18. I looked it up. I don't see what's problematic about it. It's the same thing. It's along the lines of it's saying exactly what the book entitles that. When you see the word Helen and EUdios, it's referring to Israelites. All right. Whether they're circumcised or uncircumcised. All right. Or they know they're Israelites, they don't know they're Israelites. All right. When you see those two words, it's referring to the Israelites. All right. Then you got some comments here. It says he has a problem. Not sure how I missed. Let's see. It says, I must admit, I find it difficult to accept that a Hellenist would refer to Hellenistic Jews. That's exactly what it means. That's exactly what it means. Say Anonymous, 2008. And because you don't believe in the Bible. That's pretty much. Just say that you don't believe in the scriptures. All right. And then that'll quell your difficulty in understanding. You just don't believe in the scriptures. All right. I'm saying a bunch of nothing. All right, so that's it there. I'll leave this link in the description box. All right, Hellenist as Jews. Yeah, they're the same people. Just different culture. Because when you say the word Hellenist or Hellen as describing, like pertaining to salvation or receiving the gospel, receiving the Holy Spirit, these are just Israelites that adopted the Greek custom. As I mentioned in the beginning, there's no such thing as a Greek nation. The Greek nation has been destroyed and brought to nothing after Alexander conquered the Greeks. The nation of Greece ceased to exist, and now they were just Hellenistic Greeks. Now it was just culture and religion after Alexander conquered the actual native Japhetic Greeks. All right, let's move on. Some information to prove that the Greeks, or that the Israelites were Hellenized, just in case you didn't know, Jewish Koine Greek. All right. There's a variety of Koine Greek or common Attic found in a number of Alexandrian dialects texts of Hellenistic Judaism. All right. This again, Judaism, that term is made up. It just means the followers of the Torah. All right. Mostly notably in the Septuagint translations of the Hebrew Bible associated with literature, as well as in Greek Israelite texts from Palestine. All right, you go to Hellenistic Israelites, Hellenistic Israelite religion. You could say that. All right, these things exist. All right, the Israelites were Hellenized, meaning adopted the customs of the Greeks. All right, and that's what the Alexander the Great, his progeny, adopted the Greek religion, and they in turn forced the Israelites to adopt the Greek religions and customs. All right, that's the succession. All right, so every time you see the word Hellen in context, it's referring to the Israelites that were Hellenized by the Macedonians that assimilated the culture of the Greeks and called themselves Greeks. All right. Let's move on. Here's proof. We got John 12:20. It says, "And there were certain Greeks among them that came up to worship at the feast." And we got what? Hellen. A Hellenist. Because the Hellenists, they're the Israelites that were Hellenized, that meaning made to practice the customs and culture, language of the Greeks. All right. And we know that actual Greeks cannot worship at the feast. This is only for the Israelites. All right. You go to what? Exodus 12. That's one point. All right. So you either believe that these Greeks are Israelites, or you don't believe in the Bible. You don't believe that the Israelites kept the customs. Because these were circumcised Israelites that these alleged Greeks came under. All right. These weren't like loose Israelites that were living outside of Israel. This was in the land of Israel. So these Israelites would not, absolutely not, allow Greeks to come to worship, all right, in the feast. All right. And the Lord accepted them. It says the same. It says, and among them were certain Greeks and there were certain Greeks among them that came up to worship at the feast. The same came therefore to Philip, which was of Bethsaida of Galilee, and desired him, saying, Sir, we would see Yahushua. Philip cometh and telleth Andrew, and again Andrew and Philip tell Yahushua. And Yahushua answered them, saying, the hour is come that the Son of Man should be glorified. All right. So he answered them, because these were Israelites whose ancestors were made to worship the customs of the Greeks. All right. So one of the customs that they adopted was the language, and they had certain ways of life that were about them. But they knew they were Israelites, and they came up to worship at the feast. All right. So these were absolutely Israelites. These were not Caucasian Edomites or Japhites. All right. These were Israelites that made the Greek language their customs. Helen. See what how they break it down. It says not Jews. That's how we know that they're lying. All right. What it really means, in a wider sense, it embraces all the nations that made the language, customs, and learning of the Greeks their own, and primarily reference is to the difference of religion and worship. All right. Just knock out the non-Jews there. But the definition is on point. And that's what the book is centered around. So whenever you see that word, any variation, you got Hellenos, Hellenon, Hellenison, Helleni, Hellenes, Helen. Whenever you see it as pertaining to salvation or joining the feast, it's referring to the Israelites. Just look through it. Then said the Jews among themselves, whither will he go, that he will not find him? Will he go unto the dispersed among the Gentiles and teach the Gentiles? Dispersed, it goes into the dispersion of the Israelites among foreign nations, among the Gentiles, and teach the Gentiles. So here it goes to two parts. It goes to refer to dispersed among the people that maintain the customs of the Greeks. And this one here is referring to the Israelites that have maintained the customs of the Greeks. Right? They're dispersed among the Gentiles and teach the Gentiles. All right. I already went through 12 and 20. It says, and the Jews and also of the Greeks believed. Those are Israelites that made the customs of the Greeks their own. All right. Timothy's father made the customs of the Greeks their own. No, his father was Greek, made the customs of the Greeks their own. The devout Greeks, great multitude, the chief women, not a few. Those are Israelites that made the customs of the Greeks their own. All right, again, made the customs of the Greeks their own. Yep, there. Then all the Greeks took Sosthenes, the chief ruler of the synagogue, and beat him before the judgment seat. And Gallio cared for none of these things. Yeah, because these were Israelites that made the customs of the Greeks their own. They were fighting. This was a cultural, religious strife. This wasn't an ethnic strife. This was a cultural and religious strife between the Israelites that believed and didn't believe. All right. So pretty much that's what Hellenist means when you read throughout all 20 times it shows up. Sometimes it may show up as Gentile. All right, let's move on. When Peter makes these statements, one of 1 Peter 4:3, for the time past our life may suffice us to have wrought the will of the Gentiles. All right, because remember the context is that this book is to whom the Lord was sent to redeem, as is written, he shall redeem his people from their sins. So the context is already, we're only talking about Israelites. So we don't have to use specific terms every single time when we know who we're talking about already. All right, and the book explains that also. So we'll go through that in the book. When we walked in lasciviousness, lusts, excess of wine, revelings, banquetings, and abominable idolatries. So basically, if you have these attributes that you are now, you're Helen. You're Helen. You're ethne. All right. Let's move on. Got Ephesians 4. This I say, therefore, and testify in the Lord, that ye henceforth walk not as other Gentiles walk, in the vanity of your mind, having the understanding darkened, being alienated from the life of the power through the ignorance that is in them because of the blindness of their heart. And that's the curse in Deuteronomy 28th chapter, that we were going to be blind and smit with madness. Blind meaning that you still be able to physically see, but spiritually you're going to be worshiping other gods. You're going to become a beast. All right. So when we're not within our right mind and worship the gods of the other nations, we become Helen and ethne. All right. Again, you'd have to know the context in which the writer is speaking. He's speaking to other Israelites. You go to the second chapter of Ephesians, which in that book, he left out the book of Ephesians. All right. Which this book is a perfect book to go into to prove that the Ephesians were Israelites. All right. When you see Helen or ethne, it's the same thing as when you see Helen and ethne in the other books. In Romans, the book of Acts, it's referring to the Israelites as pertaining to salvation. Ephesians 2:12, that at that time you were without the Lord, being aliens from the commonwealth of Israel, and strangers from the covenants of the promises, having no peace and without the power in the world. But now in Yahushua, ye who sometimes were far off are made nigh by the blood of Yahushua. All right. Being aliens, G526. Yeah. Apollo 3ao. Being alienated, estranged, to be shut out from one's fellowship and intimacy. Now you have become a non-participant. So in order to be alienated, that means you had to have a former relationship. All right. All right. Call someone to be no longer close or affectionate to someone to alienate. So we know that the actual Greeks coming from Japhet, or Greeks coming from Esau, Edom, all right, were never a part of the covenants. All right. So that proves that these Ephesians are Israelites because they partake in the covenant. They're made nigh. They've been brought back. All right. And that he might reconcile. Ooh, another damning word. Restore friendly relationships between. That's how we know that the Ephesians were really the seed of Israel. All right. Both into the power in one body by the cross, having slain the enmity thereby. All right. 604. Oh, we got apokatalasso. That's a long one. To reconcile completely, to be reconciled back again. Bring back a former state of harmony, meaning bringing back to the covenant. The other nations were never a part of the covenant, so they cannot be reconciled to something they were never a part of. That simple. All right. 1 Corinthians 12:1. It's about spiritual gifts. Now concerning spiritual gifts, brethren, I would not have you ignorant. Ye know that ye were Gentiles carried away into these dumb idols. even as you were led, meaning they were Hellenized. All right, the word ethne here, I'm going to assume it's ethne or ethnos. Yeah, ethnos. All right. Ethnos just means people, a group of people. All right, tribe, nation, people, or group. All right, even as you were led. What? Led by who? Macedonians, the Edomite Macedonians. All right, they Hellenized the Israelites. So if they were Gentiles carried away into dumb idols, what are they now? They're Israelites. All right, they've always been Israelites, but when you're in sins, you become a heathen. All right, let's move on. Now we look up Acts the 14th chapter, the speech of Lycaonia. All right, this lesson stems from me researching the speech of Lycaonia. Acts 14 says, when the people saw, so Paul and Barnabas did a miracle, they made the man walk. And when the people saw that what Paul had done, they lifted up their voices, saying, in the speech of Lycaonia, the gods are come down to us in the likeness of men. Now, when you look this up, it's a lot of information on this. I'm going to skim through it, but it tells you in a nutshell that it was not, they were not speaking pure Greek. They were speaking the Assyrian language, which is Aramaic. All right. The Aramaic was spoken by the Babylonians, the Assyrians, and the Syrians, which is Aram. All right. Now, let's just so you can see it, because it doesn't give you a definition. Yeah, Luconiste. In the speech or tongue of Lycaonia, and they don't tell you any, and they know. They could have put that there without research, but they didn't put it there. That's why you got to do further research. All right, and through the research, it tells you that it wasn't like pure Greek. It was Assyrian. Well, it says right there, Assyrian. I hope you can see that and blow it up a little bigger. Yeah, 250%. And this is biblia.work. And if you're on a desktop, you can put Control F and type in keywords. It's under Lycaonia, Dictionary of the Apostolic Church, Lycaonia. Go down to Acts 14. And its chief towns were Iconium, Lystra, Derbe, of which the first was capital. See Smith's Dictionary. The speech of Lycaonia, 1411, is supposed by some to have been the ancient Assyrian language, also spoken by the Cappadocians. All right. This is how we know that we had Israelites scattered. And by that, that's just a cover for Aramaic. When you look up Assyrian language, it's Aramaic. And Aramaic and Hebrew are very closely related. This is why people say, "Oh, the Bible was written Aramaic," because they don't understand. They just got a piece. They got 20% of the equation. You got to look at the other. You got to look at everything else. You got to look at Hebrew. Look at Assyrian. Look at when they spoke Hebrew. Look at who they were under that spoke Aramaic, or they call it Assyrian language. Now, each nation has their own dialects and phrases. Like the Babylonians may have spoke a different dialect of Aramaic than the Assyrians did. All right. So Cappadocia, I think I have a map. See if I got a map. Let's see. You see the range in Anatolia, which is modern day Turkey, the region. All right, so Cappadocia, and here we have Lycaonia. All right, and Cappadocia, Pontus, Bithynia. So Israel was scattered throughout this and they call this Anatolia, Turkey. Asia Minor would be to the west. All right, so you had Israelites that were all scattered throughout the whole. That's the curse that we're under. Scattered throughout the whole world. We get kicked out of Israel because we stopped worshiping the Lord and we started worshiping the gods of the other nations, and he scattered us throughout the world. All right. And his focus is on the ministries. The Bible focuses on the ministries of, the apostles going throughout the Greco-Roman world. All right. We got some more here. Eastern Bible Dictionary. We got it was Roman province. It was chief. The speech of Laconia was probably ancient Assyrian language. All right. Others think a corrupt Greek intermingled with Saranic words. All right. Which is, again, goes back. Saranic is a Greek way of saying Aram, which means Syria, and that's also Greek. It would be Aram in the Hebrew or Aramaic. And we got here. Now it is evident, this is BibleStudyTools.com. It is evident from the narrative in Acts, AC's Acts, that the people who were prepared to worship Paul and Barnabas as gods were not Greeks or Romans, but native Lycaonians. All right. So in other words, they were Israelites. All right. But they don't tell you who the native Lycaonians were. All right. That's a Greek word, Lycaonia. The language in ordinary use among the educated class in Central Anatolian, which is Turkey, cities under the Roman Empire, was Greek. All right, so basically they're saying, well, they should have spoke Greek to Paul and Barnabas because they knew Greek. Well, how did Paul understand what they said? Because they were speaking Assyrian language, a form of Assyrian mixed with Greek. Or they may even speak in pure Hebrew, because they're writing it as if they're not sure. It's kind of mixed, They could have been speaking pure Hebrew to them. All right, but according to what I'm reading here, it's Assyrian, which goes back to Aramaic. This goes back to Hebrew. All right, so let's look up Assyrian language. All right, let's see. I have more. The names of those inscriptions can only have been the names of natives. Zeus and Hermes of Acts and of our inscriptions were Grecianized versions. Make Greek or character of the father god and son god of the native Anatolian system. All right. So they basically, I think they're saying that the let's read up here. We should therefore expect to find the association between Zeus and Hermes, which is Jupiter and Mercury, indicated in Acts, belonging to the religious system of the native population, rather than to that of the educated society of the colony. And so they created their own religion. And this is precisely the character of the cult illustrated in our two inscriptions. It is essentially a native cult under a thin Greek disguise. So the religion of the city. If you were from that city, most of them, they created their own religion. The names of in those inscriptions can only have been the names of the natives, the Zeus and Hermes. So it was a similar fashion of Zeus and Hermes of Acts, and of our inscriptions were Grecianized versions of the father god, son god of the native Anatolian system. They were speaking some dialect of, let's say, Aramaic Greek. It was not pure Greek. Not Greek or Romans, but native Lycaonians, which they were Israelites. All right. Syrian. So let's go to Assyrian language. And then we're going to go to end it off with the book. And you go back to the book of Kings, H762, Aramya or Aramyath, which means the language of Aram. All right. So through Aram, you had other nations over there in the east in Mesopotamia speaking the same language, which is an offshoot of Hebrew. All right, you look down here. When you say you see the SYR, that's Greek. That's how the Greeks described the Aram in the Aramaic language. They use SYR. All right. So it's equivalent. Syrian language is equivalent to Aramaic language. All right. We got Aramean and the Syrian language, tongue, Syriac. It's the times that it shows up. Kings, Ezra, Isaiah, and Daniel. So let's look at Kings. Then said Eliakim, the son of Hilkiah, and Shebna, and Joah, and unto Rabshakeh, speak, I pray thee, to thy servants in the Syrian language. Or you can get different translation. It says, in the Aramaic language, for we understand it, and talk not with us in Judah language, which is Hebrew, in the ears of the people that are at the wall. And it says Syrian tongue, Syrian language. And it's proves that the Babylonians, they spoke Syriac. Daniel 2 and 4, which the Babylonians, through the research, they're say a mixture of Babylonians and Assyrians. All right, and it's believed that the kings that ruled were actually Assyrian. And when you do the research, but those two nations were very, very close in religion and customs. All right. Let's focus on the language, though. Then spake the Chaldeans to the king in Syriac, or Syriac, all right, which is Aramaic. Let's look up some Aramaic words real quick so you understand how closely related the language is. So it is said that the book of Daniel was written in Aramaic. All right, let's look up spake. All right, that's Hebrew. Let's look up another word. Let's look up king. All right, good example here. King. All right, we got king. We got malak. We got ma, la, and ka. Same characters. However, this is Aramaic. But see how the same characters are used? Ma, la, and ka. And you go to here. This goes into Hebrew. Ma, la, ka. Okay, this is Hebrew. But these are the same exact characters. All right. So that's why we tell you how close Aramaic and Hebrew are. All right. And we started using these characters. There's a Assyrian characters, or Aram characters, Aramaic characters coming out of Babylon. All right, that's what the Assyrians used, and that's what the Babylonians used. All right, let's move on. Now I looked up the English Standard Version, and I looked up the same precepts for the Assyrian language. All right. The Assyrian language is Aramaic. Aramaic language. Look how it's written. Do not speak to us in the language of Judah. Please speak to your servants in Aramaic, for we understand it. In those days, Artaxerxes, Bishalom, and Mithredath, and Tabel, and the rest of their associates wrote to Artaxerxes, king of Persia. The letter was written in Aramaic and translated. Please speak to your servants in Aramaic, for we understand it. Do not speak to us in the language of Judah. All right. And then the Chaldeans said to the king in Aramaic, O king, live forever. All right. So the point is that the language of the Assyrians was Aramaic. Let's look up Rab Shakah so you'll know. It says Babylonian official. All right. The chief officer, so probably Assyrian. So when they look it up, they'll say, well, how it's written from their research. He was Assyrian. All right. Posing as, an authority of Babylon. All right. But their gene goes back to Assyria. All right, so it's Babylonian official. All right. But it's the language that they spoke. The Assyrian tongue was Aramaic. Aramaic. All right. Judah tongue, Yahawadeyath, Hebrew. All right, very closely related languages. And this is how you know that they're liars. They'll never bring this up. All right. You have to, if you're explaining the idea, your point in detail, you got to bring up that the Hebrew language exists and the Aramaic language exists, and who spoke what, and then what time periods was a transition made over, and that they're very closely related. All right, as I explained. All right, now let's get into the book. I had to screenshot it to make it easier so I can zoom in and all that. So that's the cover of the book, Social Science Commentary on the Letters of Paul. But these are insiders. They know, because they left out the book of Ephesians. And they still go with the narrative that the Khazars are Japhet. Yeah, I'm sure they mingle themselves among Japhet, but the Khazar, the root is the Edomites. They go back to Shem. The Turkic people, yes, I'm sure they're mingled amongst Japhet, but the Turks go back to Esau. The Turkic people go back to Shem. Go back to Esau, which Esau goes back to Shem. They don't go back to Japhet. But again, their population is, mingled. All right. The Edomites have mingled themselves among Japhet. Yes, that's true. But the ruling body, we believe, would have to be the Edomites, because they're the ones that have the power. They've been given the power of the sword. All right, so let's go through page 1. All right, page 1. Well, screenshot 1, page 5. Paul's context or ours, and this is the thing that people have an issue with. They use modern context and modern reasoning, and you have to go back to how the times were. I'll just read. You can read the whole thing. Just pause it. But I'm going to zoom in on the last paragraph here. All right. In this way, I'm still rolling, right? Biblical authors, like authors of most documents written in high context, ancient Mediterranean world, presumed readers to have a broad and adequate knowledge of social context, presumed in what those documents describe. Biblical documents offer very little by way of extent explanation. When Paul, a Pharisaic Israelite, meaning he's a Pharisee, writes that he was sent to other peoples, usual English translations, Gentiles, all right, or Hellenists, for example, he feels no necessity to explain for his readers what's going to the other peoples might concretely mean. So again, we don't have to constantly explain to you Hellenists, because you already know who they are. All right. You might not want to go in and teach them, but you already know who the Hellenists are. All right. They're the other Israelites. All right. Other peoples might concretely mean. He makes no mention of the crucial and salient ethnocentric social boundaries in antiquity between in-groups and out-groups, between Israelites and everyone else. Members of, let's go to page 2. House of Israel and the rest of the world's population into the rubber bag world, other peoples. Greek ethne, Gentiles, literally means peoples. That's what it means. It's in the middle, and then you have to put it within context. All right. And when used by Israelites to set themselves off from other peoples, the word meant everyone else. Other peoples other than us. Yeah, whether they were circumcised or uncircumcised. It is very important to reflect on the fact of social psychology that in group contexts, any Israelite going to other peoples would be presumed to be going to Israelites resident among other peoples. All right? And our elders and apostles have been preaching this, that when it mentions these other peoples, it's referring to other Israelites, because the context is the Lord only cares about Israel anyway. We're only ones that are entered into his covenants. All right. So when we say other people, we automatically already know you're not talking about an actual heathen. You're talking about Israelite that have adopted the customs of the heathen. I'll read that one more time. And we're presumed to be going to Israelite residents among other peoples. To take a modern example, when Israelis speak of going to Americans to sell U.S. tax-exempt Israeli bonds, you're dropping some knowledge there, they are presumed to be going to Khazar Jews residents in the U.S., not of non-Khazar Jewish Americans. So you get the point. You get the contrast. Okay, you're talking about you're going to a certain land. You're not talking about you're going to that land to talk to everybody. You're going to talk to that land to talk to the group that was prophesied to be scattered. It's very simple. All right. So the point is, like, he's saying that you don't have to keep explaining who you're talking to if you already explained it in the beginning. You're going to keep saying it throughout the whole letter. You're talking to the Israelites, so you can use loose terms. All right, we go to 3. Now, he uses like different like terminologies that you may not be familiar with, like change agent, which would be like an evangelist, a preacher, you know, the apostles, a change agent. So what's going on in Galatia? A significant dimension of change agent's task is to prevent discontinuance after individuals adopted the innovation. Change agent, one way to prevent discontinuance is by forming support groups, small groups, and others who support each other in realization of the innovation they have adopted, which means converted to following the Lord. Like we adopted, we were worshiping the gods of the other nations. Now you're focused on worshiping the Lord, Yahweh Shai. All right. Paul, then he goes into ecclesia, which means gathering. Let's go down here. It says the term Judaizer describes someone intended on making people into Judeans by insisting they accept Judean observations as practice in Judea. Israelites living among non-Israelites outside Judea. All right? And that's the whole thing. This is what people don't accept. All right. Israelites living among non-Israelites outside Judea. Yeah, because you just didn't have Israelites in Anatolia, modern-day Turkey. You had actual Japhites, Edomites, and Israelites. I would say those are the three main populations. I'm sure you had to have some Persians, which is Elam there, actual Greeks, Japhet, mingled amongst the Israelites. All right, but who do the apostles go to preach to that could speak Greek? You want to go speak to the bilingual Israelites that went out to speak to the Israelites scattered in Anatolia, Turkey. All right, Israelites living among non-Israelites. All right. Outside Judea did not necessarily practice these same Judean customs. So non-Israelites outside Judea did not necessarily practice these same Judean customs, as we learn from Romans. All right, and sources cited by in 1997. In the Hellenistic world, Judeans could be considered barbarians, uncivilized, little concerned with values and behaviors, characteristics of that class of people called Greeks. Greeks meant civilized Jew and Greek, Judean and Hellenist. All right, so yeah, he, through his analyzation of the scriptures, he's saying, well, when you see Greeks, it meant that they were civilized Israelites. All right, civilized Jews, it says here. All right. Paul's outreach to Israelites living among non-Israelites necessarily put him in contact with large number of Greeks. It seems that the majority of Israelites whom Paul recruited as innovators and first adopters were indeed Greeks, that is, civilized Israelites. Okay, so we ain't the only ones that's saying it. All right, you got Esau. He sees it. I'm sure this. Well, I'm not sure, but I gather that they're not religious. They're just more like analytical. The authors of this Bible, authors of this book. All right. That their task was to strip these new. All right, yeah, because you had saying, well, you gotta keep the law to become a true Jew, a true Israelite, which wasn't true. You just had to have faith first and then establish on faith, and then you started going into non-Semitic people, Khazar. No, the Khazars were Semitic. All right, they came from Esau, Edom. Edom is Semitic. What they try to say is that they come from Japhet, which I'm sure there was a mixture of Japhet and Esau, but the main stock would have to have been of Edom, which Edom comes from Shem. All right, let's go to 4. Well, he pretty much just goes into Romans 9 on this page here, in page 264, which this is self-explanatory. I really don't have to go into detail with this. If you got any sense, then you can easily read it. If you're ignorant, then scripture say that you can remain ignorant. This is pretty simple, straightforward. If you got reading comprehension skills, you should be able to read it. It's very, very simple. Romans the 9th chapter. All right. Got page 5, page 178. Let's look at I'm gonna go Romans 3 and 29. Let me just read that out of my Bible. Then we'll close the lesson out. I think you get the point. Let's read Romans 3:29. Romans. Just bear with me for a second. Romans 3 and 29 says, "Is he the God of the Jews only? He is not also of the Gentiles? Is he not also of the Gentiles? Yes, of the Gentiles also." All right. 3 and 21, this is what he says. The author of this book says, in Paul's, says Jesus groups the Israelites, all right, insisting on performing the precepts of the law of Moses were notably the Judeans, meaning or circumcision. All right, that is Israelites from Judea or Israelites who adhere closely to Judean customs. Paul contrasts these with Greeks, meaning Israelites living among non-Israelites who over time have assimilated to local customs and accommodated themselves in the culture of the majority population. Greek meant civilized, and that included Israelite residents in majority non-Israelite populations. Yeah, because the majority there, the Lord said he's going to scatter us, and he's going to be few among the people. That's a curse. So Paul asks if the God of Israel, the God of Judeans only, is the God of Israel only the God of those who adhere to Judean customs, notably by following the prescriptions of the Mosaic law? Is he not also the God of the Israelites residing among non-Israelites? Paul's answer is, of course he is of the God of the Israelites among non-Israelites as well. All right, so I think you get the picture. Again, it's things you already knew, but it's just, it's good to see that there are actually books that Esau hides, that confirms exactly what we're saying, which we don't really need this. We can clearly just read, and by contrast and prophecy, we know that the Helen and the ethne, as pertaining to salvation, is referring to the Israelites. All right. So I will leave that there. Maybe one more thing. Go back to the scriptures. Yeah, so back to, the Hellenists as Jews. Yes, absolutely. All right. And it just confirms it, which we already knew, just in case it was cloudy to you or you wanted to see like an icon or something like that. Sometimes that might enlighten you, and then you'll be able to see it. So now I gave you some more evidence that the Hellenists, the ethne, ethnon, ethnos, all right, are the Israelites. All right. So Paul asks, is the God of Israel the God of the Judeans only, meaning inside of the land of Israel, circumcised? Is the God of Israel only the God of those who adhere to Judean customs, notably by following the prescriptions of Mosaic law? Is he not also the God of the Israelites resident among non-Israelites? There you go. I think I may have one more scripture. I think I might have brought it out already. Oh, here it is. Peter, an apostle of Yahushua, to the strangers scattered throughout Pontus, Galatia, Ephesus, Cappadocia, Asia, and Bithynia. Exactly, because that's where Israel scattered at. What did I read? I read the language of Lycaonia was Aramaic, Greek, Greco-Aramaic, however you want to say it. And it tells you that they were in Lystra and Cappadocia. Pull that back up. Right there. Language of Lycaonia was this ancient Assyrian language, Aramaic, also spoken by the Cappadocians. All right, so we know who was Peter addressing? The Israelites scattered abroad. All right, speech of Lycaonia was Aramaic. Peter, an apostle of Yahushua Mashiach, to the strangers scattered throughout Pontus, Galatia, Cappadocia, Asia, and Bithynia, elect according to the foreknowledge of the power the Father through sanctification of the Spirit and to obedience and sprinkling of the blood of Yahushua Mashiach, grace unto you and peace be multiplied. All right. Diaspora, scattered dispersion of the Israelites dispersed among foreign nations. And the Israelite resident in Gentile countries, so scattered abroad. All right, so I think you got it. You can go check this book out if you want, or you don't got to buy it. It's free. Archive.org. All right. So hope you were edified. Shalom. Let me bring that map back up. In Cappadocia. All right. So hope you edified. Shalom.